The Flathead Dogman, best friend of my youth. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I was born the youngest girl in a family of 5 kids. I got plenty of freedom and autonomy at a very early age in my crazy family too. We practically lived inside a forest, and I spent most of my time outside whenever weather would permit. I had a tiny little young dog I named Lucky because he had been rescued off the streets where he had almost gotten run over. I was his good luck, and he was mine, because when Lucky and I went into the woods together, we attracted a very good third friend into our group, and I'm going to call him the Flathead Dogman in this. Of course, at the time, I just called him the Dog-Headed Man, or Dogman, or things of that nature, because my dad was very into cryptozoology, and he had warned me half-jokingly to beware the Dogman, since we lived in an area that had once been open to logging in the Midwest. The logging areas in Michigan and Wisconsin were among several birthplaces for the modern Dogman legends. Some people say the loggers were only joking when talking about the creature, but now in the 21st century, the Midwest is still alive with tales of this supposedly non-existent beastman. Anyway, my dad was smirking when he told me to watch out. I don't think he'd have allowed me to run around in the woods by myself if he really thought that wild and giant cryptids were running around behind our house. I mean, I know he believed that Dogman existed somewhere, but I don't think he put 2 and 2 together that the somewhere might be right beyond our own backyard. You can listen to a radio show or a TV show about the Dogman in the Midwest while you live in the Midwest and still not have it really register in your mind that you are living in Dogman territory. So I remember the first time I saw the flat-headed Dogman. It was only a few days after my 13th birthday, and Lucky and I were looking for a good place to play with my new frisbee. He wasn't good at catching it because he was too small, but Lucky loved to bark at the plastic disc as it spun in the air. Then he loved to go pick it up after it landed. He'd grip it in his teeth, lift it up in the air as high as he could, then trot somewhat blindly and somewhat sideways back to me to ask me to throw it again. This one time I'm talking about, the frisbee sailed way over Lucky's head and was moving toward a patch of trees at about a 10-foot level off the ground, what I interpreted as one of the arms of Beast from the X-Men reached out from behind a tree and snatched that frisbee out of the air. Lucky stopped barking and running and stood still, his head tilted to the side in confusion. I also froze in place, unsure of what I was looking at. Then the arm of Beast from the X-Men sort of weakly tossed the frisbee toward my dog Lucky. It landed on the thin side and rolled toward the pup, landing a few inches in front of him with a plop. The arm pulled back behind the tree as if it expected the two of us to act like nothing had just happened. Now Lucky growled and got down low to the ground. He didn't want to touch that frisbee, and he was pretty unhappy with that creature that rolled it over to him as well. I remember that I hushed the dog, and I called out to whoever was in those trees, promising that Lucky wouldn't bite them if they came out of hiding. It took a while of cajoling before I sensed something moving around back there. I picked Lucky up and held him in my arms. I saw a head of another dog peek out to look at both of us, except that this dog head seemed to be about 9 or 10 feet up off the ground. When Lucky saw this, he let out a barking noise that kind of sounded like he was saying, "Biff!" The dog head in the trees responded back to him, also saying, "Biff!" I don't know what that meant, but whatever it was, it caused Lucky to stand up like a meerkat and let out a series of high-pitched yips. This, in turn, caused whatever was hiding behind that tree to run deeper into the woods, loudly. Lucky charged after whatever that was, and I grabbed for him, but too late. Now both of them were in the woods and I was running toward the trees, screaming for my dog to come back. Before I could even reach the tree line, however, both creatures came charging back out of the woods from a different location, Lucky chasing this animal that was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, either in nature or in captivity. Although I could now see from its look, demeanor, posture, and behavior that it was very young. This creature was as large as an adult bear. I don't know if it realized how big it was, though, because it acted terrified of Lucky and collapsed onto the ground with a big thud that shook the land all around seismically. And once he was down on the ground, that dog-headed animal man was overrun, with Lucky, the tiny dog, running on top of him and barking out a long speech about his obvious dominance over this giant dogman. That creature had deliberately allowed Lucky to win, just so that the two of them would have some fun together. Anyone who deferred to little Lucky was okay in my book. So I remember laughing as the two of them played around crazily. The reason I've been calling him the flat-headed dogman is that his ears were set a lot further apart than most of the images I've seen of other people's dogmen. He didn't just have a wolf head. It was a wide wolf head, with a flat top and two large pointed ears all the way on either side. My theory about that when this was all happening was that he had too much brain power and size for a normal dog's skull, but instead of growing the skull up, as in a human forehead, his skull grew itself wider. So the two canines chased each other, and we all had a great time, until my mother called us home for dinner. We said goodbye to the large monster that we'd made friends with, and I just went home. I don't remember if I expected to see the creature again or not, and I don't remember having any anxiety about it in either case. I do remember I mentioned it at dinner, but just in passing. When I was asked what happened in my day, I thought about it for a while, and I responded that Lucky had made a new friend out in the woods. I said they chased each other around, and Lucky won every chase. I guess they thought I was talking about another dog, and I suppose I thought that as well. I did say he was big, but I don't think I pointed out that he was the size of a bear, or that he walked upright like a person. I wasn't trying to hide this information. I just didn't see it as being as strange a thing to have happen as I might have thought even a year or two later. I guess I was still kind of a kid then. When Lucky and I went out into the woods, I did sort of revert to a younger kind of childhood in my head, and I think I would get lost in enjoying the confusion between reality and imagination. On different days, my dog and I would be different people, from stories or cartoons or movies, at least in my imagination. My memories mix the reality with the stories in my head, and it's sometimes hard for me to pull them apart again without ripping both of them up. I brought one of my cousins back to the area I had met the dogman at to tell her the story of it all. I didn't sense that she disbelieved me, but then again, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anybody. I didn't have any reason to make up a story like that, and my cousin knew this. So it wasn't a big deal, like she wasn't scared to be there where it happened or anything. I also showed a boy from my class who believed in monsters, and he seemed very frightened to be there. That made me feel like I should be scared too. He was much taller than I was, so why wasn't I more afraid than he was? I had never even thought before that the dogman could be watching us in that location. I had never really considered that he might ever return to that spot, even though I had returned twice already myself. Lucky and I were never alone together in the woods throughout that winter, but the very first time we ventured out in the spring, we had our second encounter with that big dogman. This one was not as playful as the first one. Usually when we would come across another animal in those woods, it would be something even smaller than Lucky, and he would chase it if he could. On that day, however, the varmint in the bushes turned out to be another dog, and a fairly large one, too. This was not a dogman. It was a four-legged one, but it looked fairly insane with hunger and pretty desperate. It looked back and forth between me and Lucky, like it was deciding which to have for dinner and which to save for dessert. I knew that whoever that creature jumped at was a goner. I knew that neither of us could win in a fight against that dog. I thought it was some kind of a Doberman, but its fur was too long, and it was also too large. This was just a monster of a dog. I watched it leap at my pup, and I knew I was about to say goodbye to my good friend. All time slowed down. Lucky looked at that monster, then looked at me with pleading eyes. There was nothing I could do to save him. My heart broke. I decided to lunge in front of him anyway. Maybe we'd go together at the same moment. It sounded like a noble thing to do, so I jumped in front of Lucky, and I turned back to see what fate had in store for the two of us. As the ravenous canine rushed closer, I realized that even down on all fours, its eyes were up higher than mine. Of course, I am a shrimp, even now in adulthood, but still, that was a large dog, and there was nothing in between us except air. So I stood there waiting until there wouldn't even be that. But then the large dogman, the heroic wide-headed dogman, ran in front from out of my view. And instead of being on top of me and my pet, I was watching that four-legged canine struggle with the wide-headed upright canine that we had befriended the previous year. I admit I didn't stay to watch that fight. I grabbed up Lucky and I ran both of us back home. I didn't want to know what was going to happen because I knew it was going to be ugly. It was already more or less summer before Lucky and I wanted to go anywhere near that forest again. But we were both young and we both sort of forgot about what happened eventually. I don't think we saw the dogman right away, but I never doubted he would return. I mean, I didn't think he'd lost his fight with the large four-legged canine. But Lucky and I didn't see that creature again for over a year. It was the winter of my 16th year, and my parents were splitting up. I knew it was too cold to go walking in the woods, but I also knew I might never be in that place ever again. My mother and I were moving to a different state, and initially Dad was talking about selling the old home, although he never actually did do that. It was not a happy time for any of us. When we went for a walk in the cold woods that evening, Lucky and I were both feeling pretty moody. I think he knew enough human words to understand that something bad was going on, even if he might not have understood all of it. I also think that the big wild dogman, the flat-topped, wide-headed, upright, bear-sized canine, I think he knew something was about to change as well. That night, I knew he would show up. It wasn't a happy feeling or an exciting feeling. It almost felt like we'd all lived through this before. This was an appointment in time that we were keeping, but it felt like it had already happened. Or maybe it was always happening. It is still currently happening. It's something that's hard for me to explain. It was our last night, and in every reality, the flat-headed bear dog had to be a part of that night. There's a hill in the back there by the water which is an easy climb on one side, but it leads up to a cliff in the back. It's a sheer drop there, maybe 60, 70 feet into the water, and the water down there is pretty rocky. If you were to jump, you might hit the water, but you might slam into a rock. So I had never tried doing it, and I didn't know anyone else who had either. It was the scariest place I knew to go to, and I would go there when I felt sad. I found that being scared chases the sadness away. Instead of feeling sorry for yourself, suddenly you think you're gonna fall off the cliff, and all reasons to be sad aren't really there any longer. So I was standing on the edge of that cliff, looking down, Thinking of what would happen to me if I hit one of those rocks, it was pretty terrifying, and the idea of losing my life made that moment more alive. And that was when I knew he was there. I could feel him before I could even smell him, and I could usually smell that creature from 30 feet away. He was carrying Lucky in his arms, and the dog was in ecstasy, wagging his tail as though it were the most important thing he would ever do. I was a little surprised at how bonded the two of them were, but I don't suppose that I should have been. The dogman placed Lucky on the ground, and the little dog ran circles around him, yapping, then a repeating figure 8 around the two of us. I wished I could feel as happy as Lucky, but I was so down. Neither the cliff nor the flat-top dogman was going to be enough to cheer me up on that evening. The three of us walked through the woods. I think 2 of us knew it was probably for the last time, but that pup was as happy as any other time the 3 of us had gotten to hang out. We were walking in a general direction back toward my dad's house, but I was in no rush to get back there. It was going to be my last night sleeping there, and in the morning, we'd be moving out of what was becoming Dad's home and breaking our family up permanently. I heard my mother calling for me in the night, and then my father. As Lucky, the dogman, and I approached our backyard, I saw my parents through the brush. It was the last time I saw the 2 of them cooperating. They were both out in the back, calling for me to come home out of the dark woods. Knowing that it didn't matter anymore, all 3 of us, Lucky, the dogman, and myself, walked up to the edge of the woods where both my parents could see us, and the dogman picked me up high in the air, where he lived. We gave each other a hug, and I laughed as I saw the stunned and horrified expressions on my parents' frozen faces. The dogman returned me to earth, and he was gone in a flash, almost melting back into the woods. I ran back to my parents with Lucky yapping at my heels and tears in my eyes. Both Mom and Dad had questions, but when I tried to speak, nothing came out but a whole lot of crying and sadness. It was a very dark time when my mother and 2 of my siblings moved with me east. I had to adjust to an entirely new way of life in the city, and I had to lose all my friends. This was before social media, so when you moved, you rarely got to see your old friends ever again. It was pretty traumatic and pretty final. When Mom passed suddenly a few years later, Lucky, who was by then an elderly canine, and I went back to live with my dad for a while. We had a reunion with the flat-top dogman, but that story is more of a tearjerker than this one, and I'm already emotionally exhausted from having remembered this saga. I don't know if anyone wants to hear a sad and sweet dogman story, but there is one more part to this. Let me know if you want me to write it up. It's fine with me either way. I don't think it's fair that all dogmen are considered monsters just because they're terrifying and just because they're man-eaters. They can sometimes be thoughtful and loyal friends, too. Just like any other kind of dog can be either friendly or dangerously savage. Such is the case with these dog people as well. No, it was not safe or wise for me to become friends with the animal. But he and I were both young at the time, and neither of us knew that what we were doing was wrong. It was so shocking to my parents that my mother never asked me about it again, and my dad only brought it up once, in passing. To me and the dogman, though, it was just a friendship. It was just the 2 of us, or really the 3 of us, bonded into one unit, almost like our own weird kind of a family. And I guess that's why I call him the Flathead Dogman, best friend of my youth. There, down the road, at the edge of that bridge over White River, the wolf had stood up on its hind legs. Check out our brand new second channel, which will be doing these little short animation things to start with. If the channel builds up, maybe I can do longer episodes over there too. Anyway, the link is in the description if you're interested. The wolf had to be over 10 feet tall. I mean, it was not a man in a costume. I wondered what the heck it was gonna do. And then... Got too many friends? Want fewer people knocking on your door? What you need is a Scary Stories brand Unwelcome Mat to place outside your residence or domicile. Our grrr model sends the message one way, while our nostalgic warning mat makes it clear the lengths you are willing to go to avoid unwelcome interruptions from pesky humans and their ilk. The Dogman warning also comes in the form of a metal sign, which you can hang any place where you feel that people deserve to know the truth. Links to all three in the description of this video. Our executive producer today is a thriller. That's why people call him Godzilla. Please join me in thanking Godzilla Tim Walker in the UK for making this episode possible. Godzilla donated to us using our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page, which gets to me immediately. You can also donate to us using our super thanks button under each of our YouTube videos, which Godzilla Tim has done for us as well. There's basically no way to help the channel that Tim Walker hasn't already helped us, and we literally wouldn't still be here without his years of help. Thank you, Godzilla Tim. If you would like to learn how to become a great figure like Godzilla Tim Walker in Ireland, then listen to our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman, as he lays out the deets. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.